Amy Fleming thought it was just another ordinary day at Heartland. The sun rose over the paddocks, horses grazed quietly, and the farm seemed peaceful. But then, a strange message arrived anonymous, perfectly timed and oddly specific. At first it seemed helpful, like someone was looking out for her. Yet there was something about it that made her skin crawl. It wasn't just advice. It was as if someone had been watching her, learning her routines, knowing her smallest details. And deep down, Amy knew this was no ordinary message. It was the start of something far more unsettling. The morning was quiet at Heartland. The air smelled of fresh hay, and the soft sounds of horses moving in their stalls echoed through the barn. Amy was checking her horses, brushing their coats, humming softly to keep herself focused. That's when she noticed that a small envelope slipped under the barn door. It was unmarked, the paper plain, but something about it made her pause. She hesitated, her fingers hovering over the envelope. There was a strange tension in the air, feeling that someone might be watching her even now. When she finally opened it, her eyes widened. Inside was a handwritten note. Check the paddock fence near the old oak. Something is wrong there. Her heart beat faster. At first, it seemed like normal farm advice. Horses often wandered or damaged fences, after all. But the handwriting was too precise, too confident, and the words were oddly personal. It was as if someone knew exactly how she spent her mornings, the routes she took around the barn, and the way she cared for each horse. Amy glanced around nervously, her eyes scanning the quiet farm. The wind rustled through the trees, and she swore she saw a shadow move past the edge of the paddock. Her pulse quickened. Was it just her imagination, or was someone really there? She tucked the note into her pocket and walked toward the old oak tree. Each step felt heavier, the air thicker, like the calm morning had turned into a quiet trap. Reaching the fence, she noticed something odd. One of the boards was loose, just slightly, but enough to let a small animal through. That could happen naturally, but the note had pointed her right here. Her instincts told her this wasn't random. She looked around again. Every corner of the paddock, every shadow between the trees. Nothing moved, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were on her. Her mind raced. Who could be sending these messages? Could it be a prank? A well-meaning neighbor? Or something more sinister? Amy knew she needed to be careful. She decided to return to the barn, but something inside her told her that this was only the beginning. The messages would come again, and next time, it might reveal just how closely someone was watching her by the time she returned to the barn. The sun had climbed higher, but the sense of unease didn't fade. Amy checked the paddocks again, this time more thoroughly, making sure all the horses were safe and secure. Yet, even as she worked, her mind kept drifting back to the envelope. Who had left it? And why did it feel like her every move was being observed? That question would not leave her alone. Amy thought the strange envelope was a one-time thing, a harmless oddity that she could brush off. But that evening, as the sun dipped behind the rolling hills of Heartland, another message appeared. This time, it wasn't in the barn. It was pinned to her front door, a crisp, white card that seemed to almost glow in the dim light. Her name was written neatly across the top and underneath. The message was simple, but chilling. I saw how you saved Star today. You're very good at noticing details. Amy froze. Her chest tightened. Who could possibly know something so small, something she hadn't even told anyone yet? She scanned the farmyard. The shadows of the trees stretched long, twisting across the ground as the wind whispered through the leaves. Every creak of the porch, every rustle of the trees made her jump. It was as if the farm itself had grown quiet, waiting, watching. She tucked the note into her jacket and went inside, but her unease didn't leave. Her mind replayed the day. Star had been acting nervous in the paddock, stumbling slightly near the fence. Only Amy had noticed, and she had adjusted the boards just in time. That was the moment the message referenced. The idea that someone had seen it, that someone knew, made her skin prickle. It wasn't just curiosity anymore, it felt personal, deliberate. Over the next few hours, more messages appeared, each one tailored to events only Amy would know. A sticky note on her tack room door read, "The saddles are all in the wrong order." I can help you fix them. Text arrived late at night. Don't forget about Cinnamon's leg. I saw you checking it earlier. You're careful. At first she told herself it was harmless, someone trying to be helpful. But the timing was always too precise, too eerie. Amy started noticing other signs too. Shadows that seemed to move just out of the corner of her eye. A soft crunch on the gravel driveway when no car had arrived. Small objects, slightly displaced in the barn, as if someone had touched them. Each little thing alone could be explained, but together, they painted a different picture. Someone was watching her, and not just from a distance, they were close. She tried to ignore it, focusing on the horses and chores, but her mind refused to rest. Even when she brushed a horse or filled a water trough, she felt eyes tracking her every move. Sleep became difficult. Every creak of the old farmhouse, every gust of wind through the windows, set her heart racing. The anonymous messages weren't just advice. They were warnings, or maybe tests. And Amy had a sinking feeling that this observer wasn't going to stop. Finally, she sat down at the kitchen table, the envelopes and notes scattered around her like fragments of a puzzle. Her hands trembled slightly as she realized the truth. Someone on this farm or very close to it was watching her every day, studying her routines, learning her habits. Whoever it was, they were patient, careful, and uncomfortably close. And Amy knew one thing for certain. She couldn't wait for them to act. She had to find them first. The night had fallen over Heartland, but the farm felt alive in a way that made Amy uneasy. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint sounds of horses shifting in their stalls. But there was something else too subtle. An almost imperceptible presence that seemed to be lingering just beyond sight. The anonymous messages had escalated from helpful hints to personal observations, and Amy realized she could no longer ignore them. Someone was watching her, and she had to find out who. She began with careful observation, moving quietly through the barn and paddocks. Every creak of the wood, every faint rustle of hay became amplified in her mind. Amy's eyes scanned the shadows, searching for anything unusual. A small hoof print that didn't match the horse's steps. A loose latch on the gate that she was certain she had secured. Tiny, almost invisible disturbances that only someone who knew the farm intimately could create. Each clue tightened the knot of suspicion in her chest. Amy decided to take a methodical approach. She started with the notes themselves, examining handwriting, paper texture, and even the placement of the messages. Each envelope and sticky note held subtle patterns, almost like breadcrumbs left intentionally or perhaps carelessly by the observer. One note had been pinned just out of reach on the tack room wall. Another slipped under the barn door, but angled slightly to suggest someone had watched her approach. The precision was unnerving. She enlisted Ty's help, though carefully. She told him only that she had received strange messages and needed an extra pair of eyes, without revealing the personal details that made the situation creepier. Together, they reviewed the farm's layout and checked areas where someone could hide unnoticed. Amy noticed something new: small disturbances along the tree line near the paddocks. Signs that someone had been walking deliberately, pausing to observe, then retreating. As the investigation continued, Amy started documenting everything. She sketched diagrams of the barn and paddocks, marked locations of each message, and noted suspicious timing patterns. Her determination grew with every clue. Whoever was behind this wasn't just a passerby. They were familiar with her life, her routines, and even her horse's habits. The thought made her uneasy, but it also ignited a fire. She would not be intimidated. Late that night, after checking the stalls for the third time, Amy sat on the edge of the barn steps, clutching the stack of notes. The moonlight cast long shadows, creating shapes that seemed to move on their own. She took a deep breath and made a decision. She would confront this observer not blindly, but carefully, with preparation. Whoever had been hiding in the shadows, whoever had been turning her ordinary days into a game of surveillance, was about to find out that Amy Fleming wouldn't be a passive target. Her mind raced with strategies. Cameras could be set up. Routes could be altered to test if someone was following her. But more than that, she needed to understand why this person was so fixated on her life. The answer could be dangerous, but Amy knew she had to uncover it. Heartland was her home, her sanctuary, and she wouldn't let fear steal it away. The observer might think they were clever, patient, and hidden, but Amy was already planning the moment she would finally turn the tables. Amy's investigation had begun in earnest, but the closer she got to the truth, the murkier everything became. The anonymous messages had led her to a tangled web of possibilities, each thread more confusing than the last. Shadows in the barn that seemed to flicker just out of view. Footsteps in the gravel when no one had arrived. Subtle signs that someone had been moving through her world, carefully, almost taunting her. But each clue seemed to lead somewhere, and then nowhere. The first false lead came in the form of Jake, a young farmhand who had been helping around Heartland. He had always been friendly, sometimes a little too curious about her routines, and the timing of one of the messages seemed to point directly at him. Amy approached carefully, questioning him about his day without revealing the true reason. Jake seemed nervous, shifting under her gaze, but ultimately, he was innocent. Still, the tension in that encounter left Amy shaken. If it wasn't him, then who else? Next came Lily, a neighbor's teenager who often visited the stables. She had a mischievous streak and loved leaving little notes around for fun. One message about a loose fence board could have been her doing, but the handwriting didn't match. Amy watched her closely, noting how Lily darted glances when she thought no one was looking. But even then, the teenager was oblivious to the larger pattern. Each time Amy suspected someone, she realized how careful the true observer was. Always staying one step ahead, even Ty became a temporary suspect in Amy's mind. He had access to the barn and paddocks at all hours, and could have noticed everything about her horses. But when Amy questioned him, he was genuinely concerned, confused by the anxiety she displayed. Ty's innocence made her heart ache. This mystery was casting shadows over her closest relationships, sowing doubt where there should have been trust. As the day turned into night, the false leads multiplied. A shadow near the hayloft that turned out to be a barn cat. A movement at the edge of the paddock, traced to a lost dog wandering through. Amy's mind raced, realizing how easily the observer could manipulate the scene, planting moments designed to mislead her. The tension grew unbearable. Every creak and whisper of the farm, a potential signal. Despite the frustration, Amy refused to give up. Each false lead was also a clue, a pattern she could study, a method the observer used to stay hidden. She began mapping everything, tracking the timing of notes, the placement of objects, even the way shadows fell across the farm. Slowly, a picture emerged not of who the observer was, but of how clever, patient, and unsettlingly close they were. By the end of the evening, Amy felt both exhausted and determined. Every near miss, every wrong suspicion, was teaching her something critical. The observer was watching her for reasons unknown, but their careful orchestration meant they were not reckless. They wanted her to notice, to feel the unease, to be drawn deeper into the mystery. And Amy knew, deep down, that the moment of revelation was coming sooner or later. She would confront the person hiding in plain sight, and everything would change. Amy had spent days following invisible trails, piecing together small, almost imperceptible clues that the observer had left behind. Each note, each movement in the shadows, each perfectly timed hint led her closer. But she still didn't know who was watching her. That evening, as the sun began to sink behind the hills, casting long, dramatic shadows across the farm, Amy noticed something she hadn't seen before, a faint trail of footprints. Leading from the paddock toward the old tool shed, her heart pounded as she approached. The footprints were small, deliberate, and seemed to vanish just before reaching the shed. She crouched to examine them, tracing the pattern with her finger. Whoever had left them had known she would find them. It was no accident, it was a deliberate invitation. Amy felt a chill run down her spine. The air was thick with suspense. The quiet of the farm stretched taut, as if holding its breath with her. She crept toward the shed, every step measured and careful. The wooden floorboards groaned softly under her weight. Shadows danced across the walls, shifting with the fading sunlight. Her eyes flicked to every corner, every opening. Then she saw it, just a glimpse of movement, a silhouette vanishing behind the shed's sliding door. Amy froze, barely breathing, her senses straining. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for, the observer was here. Somewhere within reach, Amy slowly pushed the door open, her heart racing. Inside, the shed was dimly lit by the last rays of sunlight streaming through the cracks. Tools hung in place, dust motes floated in the air, and for a moment, everything seemed still. Then from the corner, a figure emerged, hands visible first, then the faint outline of someone familiar. Amy's mind raced, trying to process what she was seeing. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone she had known all along. Someone who had been in her life, quietly observing, quietly learning her routines. The figure didn't speak at first. Their presence alone was enough to send a shiver down Amy's spine. She studied every movement, every subtle gesture. This person had been careful, meticulous, patient, and now they were finally revealed. Amy's emotions churned: shock, disbelief, fear, and an undercurrent of anger all at once. She realized that the messages, the notes, the shadows, they were not just random acts. They were part of a deliberate plan, a silent game played over days that had brought her to this exact moment. As Amy stepped closer, she noticed details she had missed before. A familiar jacket draped over a bench. A slight familiar scent in the air, the way the observer's hands moved nervously. It all pointed to the truth, undeniable and shocking. The observer wasn't just anyone. They were someone she had trusted, someone who had been close enough to know the smallest details of her life. And yet their intentions were still a mystery. Were they harmless, protective, or something darker? The realization hit Amy like a wave. The observer had been patient, clever, almost invisible, but they had underestimated her. Every step, every clue, every redirection had been leading to this confrontation. And now, face to face with the silhouette she had chased through shadows and messages, Amy felt a surge of determination. She wouldn't be intimidated, and she wouldn't let fear control her. Whatever this person's motives were, she was ready to uncover them fully, to demand answers, and finally, to take control of her own story. Amy's hands trembled slightly as she stepped fully into the dim light of the shed. The figure she had been chasing through days of mystery was finally before her, half hidden in shadows, but undeniably familiar. Every instinct screamed caution, yet there was a surge of determination that steadied her. This was her farm, her sanctuary, and she would not allow fear or secrecy to dominate her life. The observer shifted, hands slightly raised, almost defensively. Their voice was quiet, hesitant, and almost apologetic as they finally spoke. "Amy, I didn't mean to scare you. I wanted to help." Amy's heart raced. The words were disarming, but the fear and tension from the past days made her hesitate. She had felt eyes on her every step, notes revealing her private routines. The subtle signs that someone had been meticulously watching her. She studied the figure's movements carefully. There was no malice in the posture, yet the invasion of privacy had been profound. Every shadowed corner, every silent observation had made her doubt her own sense of safety. Slowly, she realized that the observer's intentions, while misguided, were not malicious. They had been driven by concern, perhaps even admiration, but the execution had crossed a line. Amy took a deep breath, her gaze steady, and stepped closer. Without words, she indicated that she wanted honesty, the full truth. The observer lowered their head slightly and began to explain. Each word revealed a mix of guilt and remorse, a desire to help, to protect, or to be part of Amy's world. But in a way that had been invasive and unsettling. Amy listened carefully, her mind racing between relief, frustration, and understanding. She realized then that confrontation didn't need to erupt into anger. Instead, it was a moment of clarity, a chance to reclaim her boundaries and assert control over her life. Amy's voice, calm but firm, broke the silence. "I understand that you thought you were helping, but this isn't the way. You can't watch me leave notes or invade my space. You need to respect me and my farm." Her words carried weight, a mix of compassion and firmness. The observer nodded slowly, a look of regret crossing their face. There was a sense of release in the room, a tension that had built over days finally dissolving. Amy felt a small but powerful sense of victory, not just in finding the person behind the messages, but in taking control of the situation without losing herself. The farm felt safer, the air lighter, the shadows no longer threatening. As she walked out of the shed, the evening light falling across the paddocks, Amy's mind reflected on the lesson she had learned. Curiosity and caution could coexist. Boundaries were vital, and sometimes understanding the motives behind actions could turn fear into clarity. The observer had been close, their presence unsettling, but now the mystery was resolved. Amy had reclaimed her sanctuary, and while the experience had been unnerving, it had also strengthened her resilience, leaving her more vigilant, more aware, and ready for whatever Heartland might throw her way next. The farm was quiet once again. The wind rustled softly through the trees, carrying the familiar scent of hay and fresh earth. Amy stood at the edge of the paddock, watching her horses graze in the fading golden light. The tension from the past days seemed to lift with each breath she took, placed by a sense of calm, clarity, and quiet empowerment. She had faced the unknown, uncovered the secrets of her observer, and reclaimed her space without losing herself to fear as she reflected on the events. Amy realized how easily trust could be shaken, even in a place as familiar as Heartland. The anonymous messages, the hidden presence, and the carefully planted clues had tested her instincts, her patience, and her courage. But more importantly, they had reminded her that vigilance and intuition were just as vital as compassion and understanding. She had learned to notice the little things, to read subtle signs, and to trust herself even when the world seemed uncertain. Though the observer's intentions had been misunderstood, Amy knew the line between care and intrusion must never be crossed. Setting boundaries was not a punishment, it was a necessary safeguard, a way to protect herself, her horses, and her sanctuary. She folded the stack of notes and envelopes neatly, placing them in a drawer where they could no longer control her thoughts or actions. Each one was a reminder of the mystery she had faced, the fear she had conquered, and the strength she had discovered within herself as the sun dipped fully behind the hills. Amy's gaze lingered on the horizon. There was a sense of closure, but also the faintest whisper of curiosity. Someone had been watching, yes, but what other mysteries might be hidden quietly in the heart of Heartland? The farm had always been a place of life, love, and unexpected surprises. And Amy knew that, while this chapter had ended, the story was far from over. With a final glance toward her horses, Amy smiled softly, a mix of relief and determination. The shadows had receded, the observer's presence dissolved, and for now, the farm was hers again. But deep down, she couldn't shake the thought that Heartland always had its secret sand, that the next challenge, the next mystery, might be waiting just around the corner. The adventure, the suspense, and the thrill of discovery were far from over. Amy turned toward the barn, her steps steady, her heart strong, ready for whatever the future might bring. And as the screen fades to black, a single flicker of movement at the edge of the paddock hints that Heartland's quiet mysteries are never truly gone, leaving viewers with a lingering sense of anticipation for the next episode.